What's going on, folks? This is your friendly neighborhood old soldier coming at you again from Robeson County, North Carolina, where it is kind of a brisk, cool morning, considering we got a torrential downpour of rain yesterday. And I do mean torrential. We probably got about 2 inches of rain in the course of about 6 to 8 hours yesterday. So yeah, been one heck of a hurricane season this year, that's for certain. But anyway, folks, I hope everybody's doing good. Today's Friday. Been thinking about some things, you know. And we talked about it some yesterday, and I really want to add some more to that today, and that's the communist Democrats, and that's truly what the hell they are now. The likes of AOC, the so-called journalists from the Washington Examiner, and many other in that party of rats and demons, want to now start compiling these lists, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, of anybody that has supported or is working for the president. What that means is if you even donated to the campaign, they want to put your name on the list, and basically, if they come into full power, is make your life a living hell. In other words, you go to get a job, they want the employers to scan these lists. Oh, he supported Trump, don't hire him. Or he supported Trump, you know, you're going to offer him a job, make sure it's just barely above or right at minimum wage. You know, don't give him anything he's qualified for, or her. He needs a loan for a house, deny him. Is he a veteran? Who cares? Deny him. This is where that's going. You know, but yet Joe's handlers have told him to get on TV, and Kamala's handlers have told her to get on TV and tell the people all the time, for the harsh rhetoric's over, we need to unify and come together and work together. And I promise to work across party lines. That's just a bunch of garbage that they're having him spew out to try and get us to, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. Bullcrap, we need to fight. But anyway, back to the lists. They're compiling these lists, okay? The next thing you'll see happen, if they still manage to usurp the powers of the government, what you will see, you'll start to see legislation being proposed, potentially passed, to start making lists of all gun owners. We talked about this last year some, the potential of that possibility happening. Okay. They'll make a list of all gun owners. And there was an interesting stat going around, something about only 3% of Americans own guns. I don't know where they got that one from, but I would say the statistics are a little higher. For example, here in North Carolina, when you fill out your form to buy a firearm, it doesn't matter if it's a handgun or a long gun, that form stays at the store for 7 years. It doesn't get turned into any type of central repository, that kind of thing. So if somebody breaks into the store, that's how they're going to get it. But see, by legal means, they could go in and tell these stores that they had to give up all their records so the list can be compiled. And that's the things you got to start looking for in the event this fraud takes the White House. Now, when Hitler came to power, there was lists made. When Lenin came to power, there was lists made. When Mao Tse-tung came to power, there was lists made. You see what I'm getting at. How do you think that the South Vietnamese fell so, when they fell hard? Because the North Vietnamese infiltrators had been compiling lists. They knew where everybody was at that they needed to go and execute. Be on the lookout for this type of legislation possibly getting passed in your local area. So that's where it starts, in the local area. It might get challenged, but if it goes to a court with a liberal judge, it might get upheld. And they'll use things like for the good of the people, for the safety of the community. They'll say, well, we need to provide this to law enforcement in the event of potential terroristic action. We want to know who to go talk to. And we could go on and on about all the other potential things that could happen. But see, the other thing too, if they've got your name on a list, makes it easier for them to seize your assets. It's another one to think about. Now, what do you mean? Well, go back in history when Hitler took Germany. First thing he did is made all Jewish business owners basically sign a registry. Type of business, list of assets, so that when the Nazis fully came to power, they just walked right in and under the law of the land that was passed at the time there, legally stole the Jewish assets and property. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole what people think about Jewish people. I'm just telling you what happened and how it came to be. Because during World War I, the same thing happened in Turkey with the Armenians. Don't believe me? Go look at it in history. We saw it happen in Korea after World War II, Vietnam, Cuba. Okay? The property of the people was seized and usurped by the government. Now, of course, in the case of Nazi Germany, it basically went to enrich the elite. Or supposedly in communism, it went to the good of the people. But even then, an elite was established. So, this is why this whole thing with lists has to be fought. And it needs to be investigated. This whole TrumpAccountability.org project, whatever, where they've already started compiling lists, honestly, that needs to be challenged in court. Because that could actually be perceived as a threat. And that could impact you and I. Because another thing that will get on their hit list or agendas, churches. You see, communists don't want you to believe in God. They don't believe in deity. They don't believe in a supernatural supreme power. Okay? The reality of it is, God gives people hope. And hope fuels the fire to fight back. You crush a man's hopes and dreams, you've crushed him. And under total and absolute communism, you become a slave to the party. Once you're no longer viable to the party, you're discarded like an old chicken bone after somebody's gnawed all the meat off. And that individual sits and gets fat and happy, while you and yours barely get the scraps from the table. And the communists know that you'll be in compliance because you have no means of defending yourself. And with that, you live in fear. That's the other thing. Why they want to make a list of all the gun owners. So when they go into trying these mandatory seizures, in some communities they'll be successful because some people are not going to buy into the rhetoric that the communists are taking over. And they'll do like the Australians did, and okay, here's your gun, here's my guns. All right, I'm giving in to the government. And I'll put it in this analogy because I had a good conversation yesterday with my mechanic. We were talking and he brought it up. He said, put a dog on a chain. Say you put him on an 8-foot chain. You let him run around on an 8-foot chain for weeks on end. And then you decide to go in and take that chain and shorten it to 1.5 foot the next day. The dog's going to fight it. He's going to like it. It's drastic. It's harsh. But if you shorten that chain 1 or 2 lengths a day for days on end until it gets to that 1.5 length, dog's not going to really fight you anymore because it was subtle, wasn't drastic. And that's all, again, a part of the communist playbook. I think what they've done here is they've overplayed their hand with this election, some of the voter fraud. If you don't believe me what's going on, go to Dan Bishop's website. He's my congressional representative. He's got video evidence of Anson County, North Carolina, where Democrat Party members outside were escorting voters into the polls all the way up to the booth. The poll workers didn't do anything about it. One lady reported it, nothing stopped. These exit poll workers were continually grabbing, when people get there, they'd meet them, they'd walk into the polls with them, because they're supposed to stop that at a certain distance from the poll site. But walking in and going all the way to the voting booth with them, which is illegal under North Carolina law. There was one instance where the poll worker was actually filling out the ballot for the voter, which is highly illegal. And yet the election officials allowed this to happen. So don't tell me voter fraud is not real and is not going on. Not to mention the number of votes. Now, and that doesn't, but see, that also plays into another type of list. That's called voter rolls. Why they need to be purged every so often. Why people ought to be required to verify their voter registration periodically. Just like you do your driver's license. That's why we also need I don't really believe in national laws that interfere with state business, but this is the one incident where I believe there needs to be a national voter ID law, period. But again, though, be cautious of what might be going on in your neighborhood, your communities, your legislatures. Be on the lookout for legislation from your communities, your states, where they may try to propose you having to register your firearms, thus now compiling a list. So it's a list that can be accessed. that gives your name, address, the number of firearms you have. These are the dangers of what this whole thing that AOC and her ilk are proposing. Because it's a revenge, it's a retribution, it's a reckoning. You see, for 4 years, they have fought freedom and they have fought liberty tooth and nail. They have refused to work with the current administration. Again, I'll say it before, and I've said it again, I'll say it now. Trump ain't perfect. Never has been, never will be. But I personally believe he was doing good things for this nation. Man just needs to learn to keep his mouth shut sometimes. Enough said. But for 4 years, they have tried to unseat him from the presidency. For 4 years, they have fought tooth and nail to stop him rebuilding our economy, bringing jobs back to America, strengthening and repairing our military. Because for 8 years, Barack Obama kept stretching our military thinner and thinner and thinner, almost to the breaking point. How, you might say? Funding. See, the military has a very substantial budget in this country, and will always need to have one. It's just the way it is. Beans, bullets, guns ain't cheap. Neither's the maintenance of it. Now, I will say this. There needs to be some legislation passed on how the DOD gets contracts awarded. There's a lot of fraud and graft there that I won't even begin to get into. Yeah, industrial military complex, for those that are going to say it. But back to what I was saying, and I keep getting on tangents. These lists, if allowed to happen, it'll be the fast track to stripping our liberty. So keep that in mind, folks. Keep that in mind. Your state legislature starts to pass or push and propose legislation for things like that, question it. Ask them why. What's the purpose behind it? More importantly, force them to answer the question, is it constitutional? Is it within your purview as a legislature, and does it fall in accordance with the United States Constitution? Does it violate any of the rights of the Bill of Rights? What do you mean? Fourth Amendment, requiring them to have a warrant for search and seizure. Some of these lists that they might try to pass, just like the red flag laws. Okay. These states have passed or have tried to pass, where if your neighbor calls and reports you because they're afraid you're going to do something, and the police show up and just arbitrarily take your guns, it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, folks. Cut and dry. Just like what's going on here and California. Oh, old soldier, what's the similarities in North Carolina and California? It's real simple. Oh, Roy Boy Pooper Scooper, the governor of North Carolina, basically has issued a directive that on Thanksgiving Day, that no home shall have more than 10 people gathered for the holiday festivities. Much similar to the California's governor's illegal proposal My question to both those worthless governors is this: who's going to enforce it? How are you going to enforce it? Part of his plan is to get your neighbors to tattle on you. Okay? So my neighbor calls and reports me for having more than 10 people. Again, who are you going to get to enforce it? Because a lot of law enforcement, many have come out and stated they won't support any type of action like that. But it's just the fact that these governors are putting it out there and putting it on record. Because in some municipalities, the police will play right along with it. I hate to say it. Some not. But again, now that puts you on record. 911, what's your emergency? My neighbor, they have 12 people in their house when they're only supposed to have 10 for this Thanksgiving meal, and the governor said only 10. You need to come send somebody. What's the address, man? 123 Bullcrap Street, USA. Okay. Oh, by the way, my neighbor's got guns too, so you might need to send a SWAT team. And then there you have it. Now you're on record. Anyway, folks, I'm here at work now. God bless, take care. Until tomorrow, Soul Soldier out.